What's up, everybody? Welcome to the LA Times podcast. We thank you for stopping in, man. We got a good show coming for you right now. But before we go on, I want you to take a second. Please hit that thumbs up button. That tells YouTube that, you know what, spread this to others. They need to hear it. Hit the subscribe button, so you could be reminded to come back. And also that notification bell, guys. That notification bell tells you that a new video is up every time. Man, with that said, stuff out of the way, we got a special show for you today. We got my brother right here, man, coming all the way via the IE, but originally from Long Beach. Man, we got brother Rey Aguilar. Thank you for coming to the show, bro.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. I'm pretty excited.
Yeah, man, we got Ray's involved with a big group of guys who've done time, and a lot of them were lifers, man. A lot of them got out, and by the grace of God, man, are just here to share their stories, man. So we're gonna go for a bumpy ride, man. But be patient with us. We'll get there, and don't tune out, man. Don't tune out. Don't miss it. Stay till the end and share this video after. So, man, Ray, we thank you again, and I want to say, man, we're gonna get right to it, bro. Let's get right into the interview. Where and how did you grow up?
Well, like you mentioned earlier, I grew up in Long Beach, California. Pretty much raised in North Long Beach. Um, I was born to young parents. My mom and my dad were both 14 and 15. My dad was 14. My mom was 15. So they're basically kids having kids, and didn't really have much guidance. They were actually, already involved in the gang lifestyle. So much of my exposure was about gangs. That was my norm. When I look back at my childhood, to see guys in cutoffs with home slippers, tube socks, and running around, that was normal. When I didn't see that, I was kind of, you know, feeling like something was off, and so, they were just part of that whole party scene. They tried to do right by moving out of their gang and moving to Long Beach. They actually grew up in Torrance, but they still took with them, those values that they grew up, adopting. And so a lot of that exposure was, to, kind of promote that criminal and gang lifestyle, not realizing that, I was being groomed. I was being groomed at a young age. So what my earliest memories were being attracted to that lifestyle, the hanging out, the cluster of guys getting together, drinking and partying, having the oldies in the background. And so I felt like, the way how like all cultures have this rite of passage, that was my rite of passage to join a gang, seeing it and actually realizing like, yeah, you know what, this is what it takes to be a man. And one of the things that my parents didn't realize is that a lot of things that they did, they were establishing for me, these norms, but also, these beliefs that, yeah, this is what life's about. This is what manhood's about, and I can look back at a lot of the life lessons that my dad taught, not realizing the tremendous impact that it was going to have on me, but, as you get older, you start to see those things and start to realize like, man, you know what? They're not always the right way, even though they came from your parents. It doesn't always have truth, but it took me some time to come to that realization. At 12 years old, I started getting affiliated with the gang. I joined the gang. I started using, simple things as alcohol, marijuana, and then it quickly escalated to methamphetamines. And by the age of 15, I was already addicted to methamphetamines. I was staying up, days on end, and so, I mean, you can only imagine the impact that has on a child's development.
Yeah, and Ray, so you got in the gang maybe about 12 years old, and then about what years we talking roundabout?
So we're talking about the early 90s, because I was born in 78. So in 90, and I mean, if you know anything about what was going on in California, that was the height of gang, methamphetamines, all those things, so that was the peak. Those were the peak years, and so yeah, I was part of a gang in Long Beach. I don't want to mention the gang because I don't want to glorify that, but it's just the whole lifestyle itself was exposure to womenizing, drugs, gangs, and you know that was it. That's all that my life consisted of. There wasn't no education. It wasn't my family traditions. I meet people and they always talk about, yeah, me and my family, we went camping, or every holiday we did this. And my traditions were hanging out in the streets. My traditions, I remember just either TV dinners or just spending it with my friends, and like I said, I know a lot of that stemmed from just my parents were ill prepared to raise a family. I love them. Today they've changed their lives. They're living lives that honor God, and I respect that and I appreciate that. But that's a process. That's a process. There's a learning curve and all that.
Yeah, Ray. So tell us about before we move on. So in the '90s, obviously, man, it was I mean, no matter where you went, man, IE, LA, OC, San Diego, it was jumping off. It was crazy. It was crazy. Just the gang violence. Now, Long Beach is a little different monster. Long Beach is a little different than most. Let's say SGV, you got a lot of Asians and Mexicans. Long Beach, you got a lot of it's right near Compton. Even in Long Beach, you got a lot of blacks and Mexicans, and there's others too. But how did that make Long Beach more diverse, or was it more of a war mentality and racial against each other?
It's interesting because I felt like even culturally, it kind of groomed me to be prepared for prison. Because like wherever you go in Long Beach, it's basically compartmentalized. And what I mean by that is like Mexicans live with Mexicans, blacks live with blacks, and Asians live with Asians, and there is no mixture. So like when and within those areas, there's gangs. You got the Crips, you got the Asians, you got the Mexican gangs and all that. So it's always that us against them mentality. And so that, I mean, I remember from school, I went to Jordan High. Jordan High was the first high school where an actual police helicopter had to land in the park because there was just massive riots, and it was, Mexicans against blacks. Half the time you didn't even know what it was warring about. It was just you're representing your race, you're representing the gang or whatever the case may have been. But yeah, that's really how it was growing up. It was kind of hard to focus on important issues because you had all these cultural things going on at the time. I don't remember growing up ever playing with other races because where I lived, it was just predominantly Hispanic. So all my friends were Jose, Juan, all the, you know what I mean? That's just my friends. And then to like see others, it was just like who are you? You don't belong here type attitude.
Yeah, I see that. I see that when I go through Long Beach, man. It's a trip. It's a trip. It was a trip. You go to one in Lewis and all them. They're just black areas, and then you go to other parts. It's just pure Mexicans, like you're in East LA almost.
Yeah,
so,
right.
So going on, man. Did you ever, make your way through juvenile hall and jail and all that stuff, man? If you could take us through that, man, and walk us along,
Sure, absolutely. You can't be part of the lifestyle without coming in contact with police, and I think for me the what ended up happening and that gave me this distorted perception about myself is a lot of my criminal mentors, they would like gang me up, school me down, and tell me what not to do, what to do. And so taking that education to the streets, I was arrested for a lot of things. I was arrested for possession of a firearm. I was arrested for GTA. I was arrested for domestic disturbing the peace, for attempted sales. All these things, but nothing ever stuck. And the only reason why I never stuck because they either didn't find the gun on me, or I gave pursuit. They couldn't tie me to nothing. And so that's part of that education. Hey, don't say nothing. Don't if you're caught in the act, run, and all those different things, right? And so that gave me the distorted belief that, man, I'm invincible. Man, I run these streets. They can't get me. I'm too smart for them. And so, I remember early on the seeds were planted, and I had an older homeboy. He had told me, "Hey, look, man, don't ever tell the cops your real nickname. Tell them an alias, because when you commit murder, you can go by your real nickname, and they'll always be looking for that alias." And I mean, I think he told me that when I was like 12 or 13, not realizing that came to fruition. That came about. And so little things like that, little lessons, like what, if you pull out a gun, you better use it. Stuff like that was just like, they became law. They became, part of the streets and part of how we lived. And so when I look back, I mean, it was like a sub society, if you will. Like, it was just barbaric. A lot of my today, my wife, she'd never been exposed to that life. So some of the things that I share with her, she's like scratching her head, like, how is that possible? You guys really believe that? And I say, you got to figure, man, we're kids, impressionable, and you have these, older guys who had never grown up, who have these, their own issues, kind of teaching us and grooming us. And so it was easy just to walk into that reality.
Wow. Yeah, man, keep going, brother. We'll walk with you, bro.
Right. So I got in.
By the way, if you see my screen go blank or something, don't worry. I'm here. I just had to do something on board.
Definitely. Like I said, so I did come in contact with the law numerous times. It wasn't until about the age of 18 that one thing that I did realize is that all that time I related to society and the world from this distorted perspective. And so, I mean, for me, the gang was the big deal. That was, what I stood for. That's who I was. All my identity was wrapped up in this gang. And so I knew that my reputation was tied to the reputation of this gang. So I better represent. And so I had gotten married at the age of 18. I wanted to do right. I did, man. My wife at the time, my ex-wife, she was pregnant. We found out we were having a daughter, and so I got a job, right? But with no skill set, no vocational training, no education. Remember, all that just suffered throughout my childhood. I mean, I think, at the probably 9th grade, I dropped out, and reason being, I was already hanging out versus going to school. And so I remember my parents gave me an ultimatum. Mom, she said, look, if you're not going to go to school, then go to work. And so, I said, okay, I'll go to work. But I didn't go to work. I just hung out. And so education really suffered. So here I am, married. My wife is pregnant. And I remember I got that first check. And it was like, if I remember correctly, like 300 for 2 weeks. Mind you, this is in the 90s, mid 90s, right? And I compared it to the money that I made selling dope on a night. And I was like, man, I'll make this in the night. I said, oh man. And I was just so disappointed and discouraged. And like I said, that's the only reality I knew. So I told myself, I had this grand plan. You know what? I'll just sell dope. And so I started selling dope. And then started selling dope. I remember, because I was part of that whole crack era. So I was as an adolescent. That's how I was taught. First thing I was taught, I wasn't taught to use a measuring tape. I wasn't taught how to hold a hammer the right way. I was taught how to measure crack, how to cut up crack, how to weigh methamphetamines on a digital scale, how to bag it up. And so I resorted to what I knew. I defaulted to what I knew how to do. And so I remember telling myself, you know what? I'm not going to sell crack. I'm going to sell methamphetamines, because crack, they bring just all sorts of, bad people, right? But meth, it's not so bad. I'll just sell meth, which is ridiculous. But like as an adolescent, your thinking isn't too clear, anyways, right? So I started selling methamphetamines, and it quickly escalated to ounces, quarter pounds, and pounds. And so now I felt like I was really in the game. I'm transporting dope, and all these things are going on, and it kind of fueled that idea that, oh man, I'm invincible, I can never get caught. Mind you, I'm exposing my family at the time to, possible, robbery, drugs, I mean, all these different crazy things, but that never
Out
even
of your house?
factored. Huh?
Were you doing it out of your house?
Yes, I was doing that in my
Oh
house. In
man,
fact, it
yeah.
got so bad. I remember I used to stash, and I don't say this proud. I say this actually ashamed and disgusted with myself. Is I used to stash dope and like some of my daughter's baby stuff just so that they can conceal it. Like somehow they won't be searched. And just thinking about it, I was just in a very bad place, And so as I'm selling dope, a situation had occurred. There was a guy who came and asked if I confront him some dope so he could get on his feet and whatnot. And so, I was like, yeah. So I gave him an 8 ball, and it wasn't for like 2 weeks. I hadn't heard from him. He didn't drop no money off, and so mind you, that's something that I had done. I'd drop a quarter pound or something, things of that nature. And so when I didn't hear from him, there was a mutual friend that we knew that introduced me to him. I seen him and I said, hey, tell so and so, what's up with my money? Where's it at? And so a couple of days goes by, and as we're arriving at my apartment, it was me and my co-defendant. And that guy approaches, that mutual friend approaches, and he's like, hey, I talked to so and so, and he said, excuse my language, F you, and he ain't gonna pay you your money. And just
Wow.
because of the distorted perception I have of myself, remember this image that I had to uphold in the street, I felt like that was an immediate challenge to who I was, and that if I was going to maintain any kind of credibility in the street, then I had to confront this threat. So I didn't even think about it. I didn't put no thought into my actions at that point. I signaled to my co-defendant, get in the car, and so we drove directly over there. And part of me, as I'm driving, and this is how crazy situations can go from 0 to 100, right? Partly, I didn't believe it because I was like, me and the dude didn't never had a fallout. We got high together, so we were on, somewhat good terms. I did him a solid. This is what's going through my head. So I'm like, nah, it can't be true. So I said, well, we'll see. I haven't heard from him, so maybe it is, right? So I go over there, and I remember, mind you, I ain't got no respect for people, property. I just did what I did. I was a law unto myself, right? That's what.
Ray, can I ask before you go on?
Absolutely.
Did your business take precedent over your hood, or was your hood took precedent over your business?
I would say that they were like one and the same, just because who I was, I knew that it reflected on my neighborhood. So like that challenge right there, I felt like it challenged me and the gang that I represented. So when we went over there, I remember just walking in there, and I walked into his apartment. No one was in the living room, and I seen all kinds of bags lined up along the wall. And I'm looking around, and so I called out for this individual, and I'm like, hey. And so he comes out, and he came out of the room, and he was holding a meth pipe in his hand. And immediately, the way I interpreted that situation was that this guy is moving. He had no plan on paying me, and he's smoking on my dope. Now, whether I knew that to be true or not, but just the like I said, the distorted lens that I was looking at life through, I pulled out a gun, and I just started, berating him. Where's my money? Where's my money? And one thing, out of respect for him and this whole situation, I don't want to get too much into details, but one thing led to another, and we ran from that house after he was murdered. And so, mind you, he was murdered for, at that time, 8 balls were like $80. And when you look back, it kind of reflects how indifferent that we were, how desensitized as juveniles we were to human life, because we valued street reputation, we valued money, we valued this dope over this human life. I mean, it's sickening to think about it today, but that's where I was. And so for me, the only thing that mattered in that room was my reputation. And so we ran from the scene of the crime, He was murdered in front of his girlfriend and another friend of his, and so they end up being the state's witnesses against us. We're apprehended six days later,
Hey,
and
Ray, before you go on, every I ask this to everybody who's ever took a life. I'll ask you another way later, but at that time, if you could take us back to that, you're thinking at that time, not now. How did it feel that you took another man's life? Was it at that time? Were you scared? Were you ashamed, or was the attitude like whatever, just another day at the office, or at that time, what was your thinking?
I guess I remember being in that room, right, and pulling out this gun and thinking in my mind that I was in the seat of power, right, and so that I controlled the situation, but it real quickly got out of control. It escalated. My co-defendants yelling at me. The victims are screaming. What's going on? What's going on? And I felt like in my heart he didn't deserve to be murdered. I felt in my heart it shouldn't have happened. But all those distorted beliefs. If you take out a gun, you got to use it. If someone challenges you, you better not back down. I remember when I was 12 years old, and just kind of rewind a little bit, back up a little bit. I had just jumped into the gang. It was like maybe 2 weeks. And at that time, the gang attire was Big Ben Davis's t-shirts. You stood out like a sore thumb, right? I'm 12 years old. I look at 12-year-old kids today, and I'm like, damn, at that age, I was already gangbanging. Anyways, so I'm 12 years old, walking down the street, and I remember some older guy jumping off a bike, and said, "Where are you from?" And I told him where I was from, and he said, "F that," and my reaction was "F you," and I started running, and he stopped me. He said, "Hey, hey, hey, hey!" And so when he stopped me, he's like, "Look, I'm from the same neighborhood," and so mind you, this is an older adult, right? This is an older guy on a bike, and he says, "Oh, you're a down little homie. You don't back down. You don't rank out from nobody." And so he took me to where everybody was hanging out, and he's like, "Hey, look how I met this little homie." And so in my mind, I felt like you can't back down from nobody. Like I just got kudos from all my whole gang, and they're like, "Man, 12 years old, you down. You're gonna be a solid homie." And so every situation I encountered myself, I relived that experience. Are you gonna back down? Are you gonna rise up? Because in my mind at that time, this is what it means to be a man. Not realizing that the cause I stood for was warped and distorted. It was just, are you gonna rise, or you gonna back down? So in that room right there, I felt like I had rose to the occasion and that I was confronting the threat. But in my heart, it wasn't. So to answer your question, right? I felt ashamed. But I masked it. I masked it with, oh, well, he had it coming. He shouldn't have, he should have paid me my money. We could have handled it in the streets. But I mean, when I look at it, I murdered a defenseless man. A man who was defenseless in his own home. Like, there's no, I mean, that's just all cowardly. To me, I look back at it now, it was just simply cowardly. But at the time, I thought, like, man, this is, I'm rising to the challenge. I'm confronting the threat.
Tell us. So obviously you got arrested 6 days later, man. So what are you thinking, man? Are you thinking you're washed up, or what?
Oh,
What's
absolutely. Let's see. So here I am. Like I said, I got married at 18, 19. I'm already in the county jail facing 28 years to life. They charged us with felony murder, robbery in the commission, murder in the commission of a robbery. The fact that we went over there to get money, they said that constituted robbery, and that in the process we murdered him. So that was the felony murder. I just remember, I didn't grow up being exposed to God, going to church. How typical Hispanic families, Easter, Christmas, they'll make their way to the iglesia, right? We didn't do that. We just, our whole life was just about, tamales, drinking, hanging out, the family getting together, or just, just hanging out. So I remember thinking like, man, this is the outcome of that. This is the, this is me arriving. Like I just felt like, nah, and in a distorted way, we as kids, we looked up to guys who were in jail, like, oh man, the homies in prison, and but here I was in that same situation, looking at 28th to life and thinking that, like, man, I'm never gonna see my daughter again. I'm never gonna see the streets. I'm never, like, reality just hits you like a freight train. And like I said, I was already felt like that shouldn't have been done, but here I was, wearing this mask, like, you know what, I'm at the top of my game. This is what I'm about. And really, I wasn't. I just felt like, I felt really depressed, but I actually tried to mask it. I tried to mask it, and we went through the whole process. We fought the case for like 2 years in the county jail. So mind you, by this time I'm 20, 21. I remember being found guilty, and my lawyer did a poll of the jury, and I didn't hear guilty one time. I heard guilty 12 times, because as he did a poll of the jury, each juror stood up and they said guilty. And so you could imagine, like, I just, man, I felt like that was a really dark time in my life. Like, man, this is it. This is going to be the rest of my life. And I went back to the holding tank, and I remember my co-defendant, he was a little bit more seasoned. He's like 5 years older than me. And so he had an H number, which means that he's been to prison multiple times. And so, I'm barely catching my number. Remember, I skated through juvenile. I got arrested a lot of times, but never went to juvenile hall because I felt like I was too slick. But here I was now, that catching up to me. 19 years old, and I didn't go to the county jail for DUI. I didn't go to the county jail for parking tickets. I ended up for a murder. And so I remember my co-defendant telling me, "Hey, don't trip," because he must have seen it on my face. He's like, "Don't trip, bro. Don't trip, dog. You know what? We'll just we'll make a name for ourselves." And when he said that, I remember thinking to myself, like, nah, I'm not gonna do that. I didn't tell him that. I still hadn't arrived to the place where I was, taking a stand for myself, or taking a stand for what I believed in. I was still just kind of going with the protocol, going with what everybody else was doing. So I just shook it off, like, yeah. But I remember I wasn't happy. And what really impacted me tremendously, and kind of like, I would say that I lived with and that I took with me to prison, is there's a process in which, when you're found guilty, right, you go to what's called a sentencing phase. And in the sentencing phase, after you're found guilty, they try to get all these mitigating or aggravating factors to kind of determine how they're going to stack up your time, right? Have you been to prison before, and so on and so forth. And it's that time that they give the victims an opportunity to speak. And they're called victim statements. And I remember my victim's mother got up there, and she said a lot of things. And looking back, I know that they came from a place of hurt and pain. But she said something that really broke me down, and I seen my mother. She said, "I'll never get to hear my son knock on my door ever again." And I just remember thinking that, man, that could have been my mom who got that call. And right there, I felt like my victim was humanized. That family was humanized. Before, it was just, like I said, it was just a big game, and like, all we did, what we had to do. But when I heard those words, and I seen the pain and the hurt in that woman, I seen my mom. And I mean, that could have easily been me who got murdered. And so that's when I felt like I had become disenchanted with the gang. Like, I didn't really believe in it like that. I didn't believe in it and what it stood for, because I felt like it shouldn't have happened the way it did, but it did, right? So here I was, 28th to life, headed to maximum security prison. Because in those days,
before you go on, did they at all offer you any deals, or no?
Absolutely not. And the reason why, of course, I tried, but my lawyer specifically had told me, he said, look, man, your co-defendant, he's what do you say, a 3-time loser. So they want to wash him up, but in the process they're gonna wash you up because he asked for like a manslaughter or something like that. And so he's like, you're gonna have to ride this out. So that's when we went to trial. But yeah, there was no deals offered. So we're headed to prison maximum. Oh, and those times, the way they determine the prison that you go through and go to, now they don't do that. And this is what's so mind-boggling to me today, right? Is you could be 16, 17, 18 years old, 19 years old, and they're going to put you on a level 4 maximum security prison because that's what the point system calls for, right? Well, they come to realize that that's not the best thing for you. As a kid, right, they're just grooming you to be psychopaths because they're putting you on yards where there's just seasoned killers, murderers, and whatever, and that's the only training you're getting. Now what they do is if you come in with those type of crimes and you're that age, the youth offender designations, they send you to a level 2. Why do they send you to a level 2? Because level 2 is lower security. Guys are programming, guys are doing good, and they can serve as good mentors. Well, trial and error, they sent us to a level 4 maximum security prison. I was sent to Tehachapi. My co-defendant was sent to Salinas Valley. And from reception, it was already riots. And I remember thinking, I think the first week I was there, someone got sliced for telling. And so remember, this is a whole new world for me. I went from street to now prison, and now it's like, oh yeah, he got sliced because he told. And so riots, first riot I was in the reception. It was, Mexicans with the blacks, and for no apparent reason. For no apparent reason, people glorify prison, but it is one of the most treacherous places to be. That's not. I mean, I don't know how many times I felt like stressed, like just dreaded stepping out of the prison door because I knew, or excuse me, the cell door because I knew what I was stepping into.
And what was reception?
Delano.
And then Delano to Tehachapi.
Yes.
It's funny because a lot of lifers that I interview, a lot of them go through Tehachapi. It's like a thing.
Yeah. And see, what people don't realize is that Tehachapi is what's called a shoe kick-out yard. So if a guy's done a shoe, whether it's stabbing a police officer or stabbing an inmate, after he does his shoe time, he gets kicked out to those yards. So you could imagine the mentality that they bring to these yards, And here you are, 18, 19 years old, and you're trying to survive. You're trying to, acclimate to what's going on, just fly under the radar, But
So how old are you at this time hitting Tehachapi?
20 years old.
20 years old. Wow.
20 years old hitting Tehachapi.
So about what year?
It was 1998. Yep, 98. Yeah, I hit May of 98. I hit Tehachapi, and I just I remember those experiences in reception. I just was so depressed because I said, man, this is gonna be the rest of my life. From a slicing to riots into like for me it was just like senseless. Like in the same way that murder for me was senseless. Like these crimes are senseless, and it's like I didn't even have time to process what had took place in county or my sentence, and here I am being, thrown into, the lion's den, if you will, and violence from violence. So you talk about being desensitized about, violence. That is like one of the number one things that I felt like desensitized me to violence. Not just violence on the streets, but add insult to injury, violence in prison. So, but you know what? And talk about seeds. You mentioned earlier about seeds. Planting seeds, and there was a seed that was planted when I was in reception, and I remember meeting a guy. He was from Azusa. He was a 3 striker. And he told me his story. I mean, the thing about him, he kind of stood out because he was just off to the side and kind of just, I was a porter. So I've always been one to be in the mix. So I'm over there in the mix. So, hey, what's going on? What's happening and all that. But I seen this guy, he's off to the side, kind of, quiet, reserved. And I remember chopping it up with him. Hey, what's up, man? What's up with you? What's your story? Where you from? And so he told me, man, but he told me, he's like, yeah, man, but I don't run with the homies no more, man. I'm serving the Lord. And I'm like, what? Like, what does that mean? I mean, like I said, I ain't never exposed to God or anything like that. So I was like, what does that mean? Like, and he's like, man, you know what? And this is the thing that really stood out to me. He's like, I know why I'm here. Now, mind you, whenever we go to, to jail, when you're coming out of that lifestyle, it was the snitch's fault. He should have paid me my money. You're just in a state of denial, right? So one of the things that stood out to me is he was like, you know what? I knew better. God had told me not to do that, and I did that. And I was like, this was like revolutionary for me, right? Because I'm like, I mean, he was just talking different. He was talking a foreign language. And so he's like, but he wasn't sore, upset. He wasn't blaming God. He was just taking responsibility. He's like, man, I know why I'm here. And so, to me, that just kind of like hit me. I was like, wow, okay, that's kind of deep. I never heard that before. So I maintained this little friendship that I was with him, that I had with him during that time.
Before you go on, and like, don't give away the story, but like, to just hearing that, to me, it sounds to me like what he was saying is, like when Paul was in chains writing some of the Bible letters, he knew that he was a minister of Christ, that he was there because of God, like whatever you do, but God had a purpose. He seen his purpose to be there. He had a purpose to be there. God needed a missionary inside prison. But don't give that up. But I have another question for you in a second, but go ahead.
No, absolutely. I felt like something about that dude, like about that brother, excuse me. I knew it was different. I just couldn't put my finger on it because I had never been exposed to that life. But what he had to say kind of really got my attention.
Yeah. And can you do me a favor? Okay, there's people watching, right? They have no idea. Okay, you get to prison, but they have no idea the makeup of man. What, like, if you could explain to them just briefly, you have guys from OC, San Diego, San Gabriel Valley, LA, Harbor area, SGVS, San Fernando Valley, Bakers. Like, man, how does it work in there? And I know, but for the people watching, does everybody separate, or is everybody together, or how does that work? Is there tension between groups? If you could share that, just so they understand where you're at, what you're going through, what you walked into.
Well, yeah, and just kind of like what we shared earlier is that everything is factions in there. I'm talking about the moment you step in, it's like, where you from? Sadly, I mean, for me, I was a gang member, so like it was easy to say, oh, I'm from Long Beach, the Harbor area. And but for guys who are like residents who get caught up in the system and ain't from nowhere, oh, they're gonna be from somewhere, whether they like it or not. And a lot of people, they like, what do you mean? It's like, well, that's just how the system is designed. I mean, even the cops will tell you, like, look, where are you from? And you're like, oh no, I'm a resident, I'm not from nowhere. No. Where do you live? Okay, so you're a southerner, you're a sureño, you're this, you're that. And so that's how it goes. You had no choice in the matter. You really don't. Like I said, for me, it was easy because I fell in line with what I was already doing. But for others, it's like right away. I've met so many guys who never even been exposed to gangs, but now here they're running with Southerners because they grew up in Fontana. They grew up in some city, or they know somebody, and they're like, all right, well then you're a homie. And so it's all manipulation in there, and sadly, those are the ones that get taken advantage of the most. But yeah, and the only difference is, I feel like when it comes to level 4s and the lower levels, is level 4 is more united. It's more like, and what I mean by united is just like all the southern gangs come together, all the northern gangs come together. And then when you drop to the lower levels, like level 3 and level 2, it's more factions. Like, okay, you got Harbor area, you got San Diego car, and it's usually those gangs. And so they kind of like compartmentalize themselves, but it's still the same. You got Southerners, who everybody down south, and then you got Northerners, everybody up north, and all races do the same thing. They got the Bloods and the Crips and all that.
And then, as you're doing time, like, I'm just taking a pit stop here and there, before we go on. so throughout your time, like I know right now we're kind of at the Hatchapee and stuff, but during your time, there's always there's always the mob and all that. But did you ever run into like any of these celebrity prisoners or stuff like that, or anybody out the box famous? I'm sure you have, because
Right. No, it's funny because my wife, she she tells me, she says, my son, because I got a 2-year-old son, right? And she says, oh, my 2-year-old son, all he knows is murderers and killers, right? Because all my friends are former
yeah,
lifers,
yeah,
and 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 sometimes someone will come get blasted on TV. Like right now, recently, Bruce Davis, he was on TV because he got denied, and she's like, I can't believe this guy writes letters to my house, and so yes, I've been around a lot. I've been by with Lyle Menendez, Suge Knight. I mean, when you do 22 and a half years, you come across a lot of known people. Rick James, who else? Yeah, quite a bit. I mean, even infamous cases, ones that like I mean, like the Menendez brothers, that was an infamous case too,
oh,
Yeah. So yeah, you come across a lot of people.
it's a trip, bro. Yeah, man. But please go on, bro. So
Yeah.
you're
So
at the Hatchapee, you're level 4, and that in itself is something, because I've been to level 4 Corcoran, and that's something else, bro. That's some serious stuff. So go on.
yeah, well, talking about the anxiety, man. I mean, I went there um like not knowing like what to expect, and I think one of the biggest barriers for me wanting to change, because like I said, I already had that desire to want to change, like, man, this ain't really for me. But one of the biggest barriers is that those distorted beliefs in the back of my head, like, man, I can't change right now because people going to think I'm weak, people are going to think I'm scared, people think I hit a level 4 yard and I'm scared, that's why. And so that macho-ness wants to kick in and be like, nah, I'm not scared, just really foolish, right? Well, I remember my introduction to a level 4 is the yard was packed. There was no room for us, so they put us in the hole, and it turned out, being from Long Beach, it's a big gang, and so you always bump into somebody from that gang. I don't care what prison I went to, I've always bumped into guys from that gang. And so yeah, so sure enough, I had a homeboy right there, and he had the whole ad seg. He was already indeterminate. He was already up there, and so I remember him telling me, like, look, man, if you want to stay, you could stay in that prison. It's up to you, right? Or if you want to chill in the back, just come back here, go and then just check in. He said, but you can't come out. You can't come back here with an assault. You got to come out here with the stabbing. You got to come back here with the stabbing. And in my mind, I'm like, the heck are you talking about, right? I'm 19, 20 years old, and it's just all about violence, And so it was like, and so he goes, oh, but we got some good homies on the yard, so just find them and just chill. But I mean, all that was just like, what did I get myself into, man? What did I get myself into? Is this really gonna be the rest of my life? And so, I remember stepping on that yard, like really depressed and defeated, and trying the best I could to hide it, to really hide it, but I couldn't. It's just because it's so overwhelming, it's so overwhelming. So I remember, I had this moment where I was like, my celly was working out, and we're on the roll call and all that, right? He's working out, and I'm sitting there laying, and mind you, I had already, like, been thinking about changing, and I told my they're doing this the roll call, so they're calling us off, and then he's doing his workout, he's sounding off, and I'm like, man, is this really what I want for the rest of my life? Like I don't believe in this, it's just like, it's just so foolish and ridiculous. And so I thought to myself, man, when I step out onto this yard, man, I'm gonna walk with I'm gonna walk with the Lord. I'm gonna see what God has in store for me. And so I remember when the day room came, my heart was racing, and I told my the homies that were there at the yard, on the yard from my neighborhood. I said, hey, man, let me talk to you, man. And he's like, what's up, man? What's going on? I said, look, man.
Before you go on, some places, man, that's a death sentence right there, bro.
Yeah.
Even thinking about that, bringing it up, talking about it, Did that go through your mind? Did you already think about that, and whatever will be will be?
You know what? No, but there was moments where I had that. But at that moment, it was. I remember. I'll just share with you what got to me, got to that place. Right, is I had this desire to want to do different, but like I said, what was gnawing on me is like, man, they're gonna see you as scared, as a punk, as a lame, all that, right? So I remember getting on my knees and crying and telling God, like, leave me alone. Like, I don't want nothing to do with this. I just want to like just do what I do, right? Well, the way I was living, but it was that compulsion. I couldn't. And so I said, you know what? I'm just gonna act out on faith and just like I said, at this time, I don't know what the heck's going on, right? I really don't. I've never been to prison before. I've never been to level 4 before. So I don't know what the stakes are, right? And so I remember telling my homie and telling him like, hey man, you know what? I'm gonna walk with the Lord, man. I'm gonna go to church. And he's like, I remember his reaction was like, what the F are you talking about? And I'm like, hey, look, man, I don't care how you feel. This is just what I'm gonna do. And I remember him getting real upset. Like I seen it in his demeanor. His face changed. He got hot and he's like, look, man, you on your own. You ain't got nothing coming from us. Da 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 da. And like, I mean, that kind of, that took me back, and I got upset. Like, man, is this dude like, mind you, I'm still in that mindset too. And I'm like, man, is this dude like, but I was just like, maybe that was the graceful separation that I need. But he was like, man, you on your own then. And he's like, man, I can't believe it. And he's like, hey, you know what, this food, and I just walked away. And
hold on right there, bro. Hold on right there. See, we're gonna have to stop right there. And that's a cliffhanger for everybody out there, man. We're gonna have to stop right there. You're gonna see what happens. Does he get beat on? Does he get ransacked? Does he get booked? Does he get stabbed? Or does the protection of the Lord just go on him, man? Either way, whatever happens, man, this is awesome. I mean, it's a great story. We're gonna have to come back for part 2, everybody, and it'll probably be next week. I'll schedule it with Ray. But Ray, man, thank you for the story, bro. It's so cool.
Absolutely.
I know we haven't got to the good part yet, bro, but man, we'll get there.
I'm just thankful that I'm able to tell this story on this side of the wall, and hopefully someone, even if it's just one person that's impacted by it, that help them to make a better choice so that they don't end up in the same place that I was.
Yeah, man, we're going to have part 2, hopefully coming next week. Hopefully we could schedule that, Ray. Also, is there anything else, man, if they wanted to contact you or maybe have you come speak or, speak at their church or, share on another channel, where could they get a hold of you, man?
Absolutely, man. You can reach me. We just started a nonprofit called Our Time, and we're getting it going. So yeah, you could reach me at my email address, rjraguilar20@gmail.com. Man, I would love to speak at churches, to just kind of address the youth. I've been looking for opportunities. I've been out 2 years, and I got out when the COVID had just hit. So, I haven't even been able to really acclimate, but, I'm working, I'm doing this. And, that's what I had hoped to do when I finally got paroled, is to get back, to tell my story so that someone out there could be impacted. So hit me up, man. If you guys need me to come and share with the youth, or if you need me to speak at wherever needs and wherever you need me, I'm going to make myself available.
Awesome, bro. And can you do me a favor and say the link of your nonprofit or the name of it again?
The name of it is Our Time Our Time Company, and it's made up of a bunch of ex-lifers who were incarcerated at age 14, 15, 16, myself 19, and we're giving back through the form of services, so reach out to us. We try to do interventions and stuff of that nature.
Yeah, please send me the info so I could put it below in the description of this video, so people can find it. And I'll also put your email down there. So everybody, thank you so much, man. Part 2 coming next week. Please, man, I hope you enjoyed it. We have a lot more to come, man. Part 2 is going to be fire. We're going to get to see what happens as he approaches homies, over at the harbor area. So anyways, God bless you guys, everybody out there. Thank you,
God bless. Hey, Paul, thanks for what you do, man. Appreciate it.
Cool, man. Don't hang up.